Hi, good evening for everybody. Welcome back to another episode of our talk show. Today, we're going to be talking about two of the skill migration visas, the Subclass 190, Skill Nomination Visa, and the Subclass 491, the Skilled Work Regional Provisional Visa. So, moving on with the first question, what is the Subclass 190 and 491 visa?
Hi, everybody. So both of the visas are points-tested visas, and for somebody to participate in these visas, you obviously need to be sponsored or nominated by the state. And one of them is a permanent residency visa, in the sense that the 190 visa, when you get that visa grant, you're like a permanent resident, which lets you to live and work in Australia on a permanent basis, whereas the 491, which is the skilled work regional visa, is a visa that lets you work, live, and stay in Australia for a period of 5 years. And it's a pathway to permanent residency visa 191. So it's a bit different, but the end destination is the same.
Okay. So, in terms of numbers, how are these visas distributed across the state and territories? Do some states offer more invitations than others, or are they equally distributed?
Okay, so to understand the allocation to the different states and territories, we need to understand the overall planning level. So if you look at the current 2025-6 planning level, the number that was planned before the start of the 25-26 financial year was around 132,000. So that 132,000 is distributed amongst the general skill migration visas like 190, 491, and other visas like 189, including other visas as well. So for the coming financial year 2026 to 27, which begins from July, this planning level is pretty much similar, around 132,000. And I have the stats in front of me. So we can see that they have drastically dropped the 491 numbers. So compared to 33,000 for 491 visa last year, it is 14,000 something. But the 190, which is the better of the two, I would say, it was 33,000 last year, and now it has increased by like 2,000, 35,000. But that being said, what is important to understand is that out of the planning level, it is not the number that actually gets utilized. For example, if we go back to the same utilization of the state, the 190 and the 491 visas, out of that 33,000, for example, that was earmarked, around 20,000 was utilized. So basically, it is not that if you plan 30,000, you're going to utilize 30,000. And in terms of how the state's allocation works is that obviously bigger states get a bigger piece. So if we look again, correlate to the last year key planning level, we see that New South Wales and Victoria have got the highest 5,000 each, followed by Western Australia at 2,000 and Queensland at 3,000.
So, which occupations are currently in good demand to secure invitations under the Subclass 190 and 491?
So I have mentioned in a couple of videos, not YouTube, but in maybe TikTok somewhere, that there are so many occupations in the skill occupation list, the medium and long-term strategic skills list, regional occupation list, short-term skill occupation list. So it depends where your occupation is sitting, and depending on where your occupation is sitting, you're eligible for like all the visas or some of the visas. So long story short, some occupations like accountant, IT are very competitive. So if you're in one of those occupations, until and unless you have very high points, it's so hard to get an invitation for these visas. Now, if you are, say, in the building and construction sector, for example, carpenter, tiler, bricklayer, or for that matter, if you're in the health sector, registered nurse, enrolled nurse, or if you're in the teaching sector, ECT, early childhood teacher, primary school teacher, secondary school teacher, the invitations are happening at a much lower level than the occupations like accountants and ITs. So it's always advisable to see where you sit in that overall points matrix, and the occupation decides your chances of getting an invitation at a lower competitive score than some very highly competitive scores.
Okay. So you had mentioned that both these visas are a point-based system. So how does the point system actually work?
So yes, I'm sure some viewers must be already aware on how the point systems work. So there are points given for example, factors like age. If you are like less than 33, you're in your late 20s or early 30s, you haven't reached 33, you get like 30 points from age. So see, when you're talking about points, 30 points is coming from age. And then there are points for qualification. Now, if you have like a bachelor's or master's degree, it doesn't matter. It's like a 15 points. I mean, you just can't say I did a bachelor's, I'll get points from here and then additional degree. But then if you have a PhD and all, then you have 20 points. So the maximum of the points apply. Likewise, you get points for English. Now, if you have superior English, you get 20 points. If you have proficient English, you get 10 points, which is again like in IELTS terms, like if you get IELTS 8 in all bands, that's superior English. 7 in all bands, you get 10 points. So you can do PT equivalent as well. So both are accepted. Now, if you have a partner and if your partner can score like IELTS 6 or PT equivalent, you can get 5 points from your partner also. Now, if that partner has an occupation where he gets a positive skills assessment and his occupation is in that list which I mentioned earlier, again, there's another 5 points. So I'm sure you must have heard of Nati, where you have that Songkha now being included in that overall list. So, but just by taking that Nati test, where Songkha is being tested, your fluency, how much you know it. So if you pass the test, you get another 5 points. So likewise, it's a point test stream and you can get points for work experience as well. So some of the people have a lot of points because they have work experience, they have higher qualifications, they have a partner who's skilled, so then they have superior English. Whereas some people don't have more points, but it's a matter of how you can maximize the points to your advantage.
So are some Australian states/territories easier than others for securing a 190 and 491 nomination?
Yes, I would say, see, if we again go back to Western Australia, now, Western Australia migration is one of the very favorable migration opportunities that one can avail, mainly because it has a very flexible in the sense it has a lot of pathways. They have a schedule 1, a schedule 2, they have a graduate pathway. And the good thing about Western Australia migration is that for some pathways, even if you don't have a job, and if it's like a building and construction related occupation, you don't need like a work contract. And for 49 visas, you don't need a work contract. You can have an occupation, get your skills assessed, not even have a related work to your occupation, and still get that invitation through one of those pathways. And if you have studied in Western Australia, then there's a graduate work stream which obviously helps. But if we jump back to Queensland, for example, now in Queensland, to participate in 190, 491, you need to have a job for at least 9 months for 190 and then 6 months for 491. So that is hard for some occupations because you can get your skills assessed, but if you don't get a job, you can't participate in 190 and 490. So likewise, other states also have their own ways of assessing things. For example, Canberra has the Canberra matrix. Based on how much points you score in the matrix, it decides your invitation chances. So overall, looking at the different states and territories, from my experience, Western Australia migration system is definitely one of the best out there. And that is why a lot of Bhutanese living in Western Australia are hugely benefiting from this.
Okay. Now, can you also talk about the expression of interest, also known as the EOI, and how it plays an integral part of the invitation process?
So yes, so for the skill migration visas like 189, 190, 491, you have to lodge your expression of interest. Now, by EOI, what I mean is that there's a system. You need to express your interest, like, okay, I'm 32 years old. I have a partner who is a civil engineer. I have done my NATI. So you're not really providing the evidence. Like you don't have to like upload documents like your English scores, your age, identity proof. You're just claiming points based on the submissions that you're making. So then you submit the EY, which is free lah. There's no charge for EY. And just to cite an example, now if you're say a registered nurse and you submitted your EY and say your points are 90 and you get invited, say let's take the same example, Western Australia migration. If you get invited, then Western Australia migration will send you a state nomination application. So then whatever you claimed in your EY, you have to show. Okay, I'm 32 years old. Okay, this is my passport or CID to prove that I'm 32 years old. I've got superior English. Okay, I've got IELTS 8. Okay, this is my IELTS certificate. So you claim, and then Western Australia endorses that nomination, and then they send it to the Department of Home Affairs, and the Department of Home Affairs sends you an invitation. So EY is an integral part, meaning that without EY, you can't really participate in these visas.
How long does the overall process usually take from the expression of interest to visa invitation?
So, see, this is a good question because I know that many people get flustered when they submit an UI. Their scores are competitive, not super competitive, but competitive, and they are like waiting for an invitation, which does happen in few cases, but in some cases it doesn't. So they get a bit anxious. They're waiting for the invitation. So the time, the time taken from the time you submit an expression of interest and the time of invitation, it varies from person to person. It depends on your scores lah. If your score is like super high, like 100 or 95, and then you're having an occupation like a registered nurse or an early childhood teacher, then you have very high chances of getting a faster invitation. But if you're like an accountant, if your score is like 95 or 100, like I mentioned before, accountant is so competitive lah. Even if you have 95, 100, 105, to get an invitation is so hard. So you have expressed your interest and you're just waiting for invitation, which may not happen because of your occupation. So it varies lah, and it depends from occupation to occupation.
Now, what determines why some applicants with similar points/profile receive state nominations while some others don't?
This is interesting because I'm just sharing some examples I come across. So for example, person A has 80 points. Person A is a registered nurse. Person B is also a registered nurse, has the same points. Now, probably they lodge their EYs. By the way, I forgot to mention now, EY is like a first come, first serve. So if you lodge EY a bit earlier than somebody, if you have the same points, obviously your EY gets more priority. So see, person A, person B, 80 points, 80 points. RN, registered nurse, registered nurse. And then one gets invited, the other doesn't get invited. So then the question comes, why am I not invited? So this is a very important question. And if you look at the Western Australia state government, the website, they clearly mention that these things can happen, and it does happen, and they're not answerable as to why person A got invited and person B didn't get invited. Mainly because when they look at your points, they look at your profile, they look at your partner's profile. For example, say person A's partner has a positive skills assessment, is a civil engineer, the applicant is a registered nurse, partner is a civil engineer, partner has the skills assessed. So partner is also like something that will contribute productively to the state. So that is something that goes behind the scenes. Obviously, Western Australia won't say, I chose your UI because you have a partner who's an engineer who might contribute to our economy. Those things are behind the scenes lah. But such things happen. A lot of time, such things add to the reason of being invited and not invited. This is just an example I'm sharing, but we also don't have the exact details as to why somebody got invited and why somebody didn't get invited. So, see, I would say that if you have everything you have more chances. But if you have few things that that your friend or colleague or somebody like the person B who doesn't have, few things, then you should understand that these behind the scenes things make a difference.
Now, for the last question, is it advisable to disregard your 491 invitation in the event that a 190 invitation opportunity would go away?
So see, the reason, I mean, the question Jimmy is asking is that at times people get invited for both 190 and 491. It happens because your occupation is in demand for 491 190, and your points are high, so you get like two invitations at the same time. So obviously somebody who gets invited for 190 491 would obviously choose 190. But some people, maybe their points are competitive but not super competitive. They get invited for 491 visa, which I told is a 5-year visa, pathway to permanent residency. So they feel that if I choose 491, that it gets locked, which is correct. So they feel that my 190 invitation might come later, and then they like want to wait. But it is risky. Risky in the sense that once you get your 491 invitation, there is a certain time period during which you have to accept. If you don't accept, then the EUI is like withdrawn, So I know some people waiting for 190 and then losing the opportunity for a 491. But at the end of the day, I feel that with things getting competitive, 491 visa is a pathway and it doesn't have very stringent requirements. If you don't get invited for 190, just go with the flow, hop onto the 491 visa. After being on 491 visa for 3 years, you get an invitation for 191, which is like an invitation which doesn't happen due to merits, but mainly because of the basis that you have been on 491 for 3 years.
Okay, well, that is it for the talk show today. Hope you guys enjoyed and understood more about the subclass 190 visa and the 491 visa. If you guys have any questions regarding it, please make sure to contact the number on the screen, or if you have any other questions about any other migration education related, and then we'll get back to you. So hope you guys all have a good one, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.